Welcome to Jazz Therapy, where we explore the intersectionality of jazz, the psyche and psychoanalytic thought, spirituality, and consciousness. I'm your host, Jessie Shapiro. Cooper Salmon is a painter whose practice centers on the lived experience of progressive vision loss. Diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, Salmon works in large-scale acrylic figuration to explore perception, disability, and the urgency of seeing before blindness. His paintings combine narrative imagery, cartoon motifs, and art historical references to map the shifting terrain of embodiment. Salmon earned his MFA in art practice from Stanford University in 2025 and his BFA from California College of the Arts in 2019. Upcoming residencies include Headland Center for the Arts, Fall 2025, Cité Internationale des Arts, Paris in Spring 2026. Nature is not only all that is visible to the eye, it also includes the inner pictures of the soul. Edvard Munch. The emotions are sometimes so strong that I work without knowing it. The stroke comes like speech. Vincent van Gogh. Painting is poetry that is seen rather than felt, and poetry is painting that is felt rather than seen. Leonardo da Vinci. So as we just settle in today, welcome Cooper, and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I wonder if anything comes up just hearing these quotes. I always start the show off with quotes. I'm a big quote person. Anything stood out to you as an artist yourself, or just kind of felt relevant?
Yeah, I mean, there was that sentiment from, was it Van Gogh, talking about the relationship between poetry and painting. A lot of artists, when you ask them about the process of painting, they talk about this pre-verbal sort of knowing, like this intuitive knowledge instead of this more academic or knowledge that is using the language of text and speech. Because there's a painting I think of as its own language. And so interfacing with that as a practitioner of painting definitely resonates with me when I hear those quotes.
I love that about just our intuition really guiding us, almost like what is going to emerge is already formed on the inside. And he's talking about like having these really strong emotional experiences that sort of like drive the work forward.
Yeah, definitely. A big part of building a work of art is rooted in chance and discovery as you're working with the object and it's forming. And so there is a lot like life is being made, and there's sort of this dance between you and the thing. And putting words to that is pretty difficult, actually, because if you could say it in words, there'd be no reason to paint. That's actually a quote from another painter, I think, like Martin Kippenberger. So I think about that quote a lot.
Oh, I love that. I wonder if you could talk about, as an artist, the process of creation and how that emerges for you as primarily a painter.
Yeah. The process of creation. You know, it's an interesting thing because I've just gotten back to town coming from my MFA, and I don't have a studio anymore. And I've been real anxious this last week, and I was trying to figure out why. And physical exercise is a big outlet for me, for my mental health. But I had this epiphany the other day that, I need to draw every day. Like, I need to draw every day for a sense of, to maintain an inner sense of balance. And I think when you ask someone why they're an artist, there are rational answers, but I think something that I think distinguishes artists from other people is it's something that they feel called to do. So I very much see painting as my vocation in that sense.
Oh, I love that. I know what you mean about this like inner impetus to create. I've also gone through stretches where I was working less or not as engaged, and I felt like there was something inside of me that was kind of almost going to like wither away, like if this energy wasn't being moved out in the same way. And so I needed to be creating, like doing a podcast or even spacing my clients out over, you know, a couple days rather than like just on one day in times when I've been busier, so that energy that doesn't come out in other areas of my life is really moving. Yeah. So I get what you're saying about that. Yeah. I wonder if you could talk to us about your calling. You mentioned a calling to be a painter, and on Jazz Therapy, we really love to talk about and hear about deep passions that drive individuals on the path to individuation, and just sort of your calling and how that has come to bring you where you are today.
Yeah, I mean, my journey with art started with musical theater. When I was young, I was homeschooled, and my parents needed something to do with all their kids, because I'm from a large family. There's 8 of us. I have 7 brothers and sisters. And so they really valued sharing experiences with us rather than material things. And so we tried lots of things, the music symphony, soccer, things like that, tap dancing. But musical theater was something that a lot of us could do. And so I spent a lot of my young years singing, dancing, acting. And then when I was getting into high school, I pivoted to art because I was fortunate enough to go to a charter school in Sacramento called the Thomas Charter School, where we had dedicated arts class. And in fact, a lot of the curriculum was structured around the arts, which is rare in the public school system now, unfortunately, especially because there's data and research now about how important the arts are for your emotional development and for your personal agency as a young person, because art is a realm where you get complete control over what you make in your environment, which is something young people don't often have because they are following someone else's track usually. So when I started painting at the age of 14, 15, 16, that was the first time where I really had the sort of moment of like this is it. Like, this is my thing.
It's interesting to hear that it wasn't until you were about 14 or 15 that you had that calling. I feel like there's a lot of pressure today for young people and children to be really successful, like from a very young age, and that they need to find it. And it sounds like this kind of organically came to you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big believer in learn by doing. You know, I think I was reading this great book by the music producer Rick Rubin, who's worked with lots of musical artists in his career. And in his book, one of the main sentiments that he talks about that I've been thinking about lately is the importance of testing ideas, because so often we talk ideas in and out of existence. But the best way to actually know if an idea works is to test it. And so that's definitely a large part of the art making process, because you're testing technical processes to make sure that your visuals have the kind of aura or the valence that you want. And so when I was growing up, my parents had us try lots of things. And in doing that, you find the thing that works for you. And looking back now with hindsight, I can see all the doodles and the drawings and the sides and the margins of papers and things like that was with me the whole time before it was intentionally pulled out of me in an art class.
I wonder if you could talk more about the process of testing out ideas in art and kind of what that looks like in terms of your journey with painting. I imagine sometimes things don't come out in the same way that you have them envisioned in your mind, and that it can be a process of kind of trial and error, and there can be a lot of like ebbs and flows with that process and just what that looks like.
That's a great question. I think it's hard to be an art student because I think there's a pressure to have a pretty finished product, like a finished pretty picture, especially because there's a grade attached to it. So something that is so intuitive is then judged on these more academic, like rational terms. And I think that can be anxiety inducing. for students and can maybe feel antithetical to the spirit of that process.
Mm-hmm.
And so as an arts practitioner, you have a lot more freedom, obviously, because you're doing it for you. And in testing things out and in failing at things or in messing up or stumbling, all of that is useful information, actually. I think about Thomas Edison when he was developing the light bulb. Someone asked him how it felt that he had failed at making the light bulb 1,000 times. And he said something to them, paraphrasing me, he said something to the effect of, I haven't failed 1,000 times, I have learned 1,000 things that don't work about making a light bulb. And that actually is, hugely helpful in getting to the thing that does work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I'm curious about how that comes out, like if there's a piece you worked on, or if you could walk us through a little bit what that is like in terms of the actual process of working on a piece and seeing it through from an idea in your mind, or that what comes to you in your mind, and then walking it all the way through.
Yeah. I used to, at the beginning of my arts journey, I used to not finish pieces often, to paint over them or to scrap them. But it's rare that I'll do that now, because I've accepted and gotten used to how I work and the fact that there's always an ugly middle phase of something in process as you're working on it and working through it. And I have really grown to just trust that process. And it's very fun, honestly, is the thing that it really comes down to engage in creative problem solving. Mm-hmm. And so if something's not working in a painting, there's people who come and judge your work in a critique setting can tell you what's not working, but no one can really tell you what needs to change, because all that feedback is how they would solve the problem. But it's not their job to solve the problem, it's yours. Mm-hmm. So in solving those problems, the thing that keeps me coming back to painting is the feeling at the end when I have finished a piece and I know that it's done and it has a presence that, lets me know that it's done. And it's very satisfying to know that I have finished something that I really believe in. And then you come back later and then you look at it again, and it either gets stronger over time or weaker. And I've learned to pay attention to that too. Mm-hmm. So in working on the craft of painting, I've gotten to know myself a lot more, I think. And it now is a really safe space for cathartic, almost like diaristic sharing, if that makes sense. Yeah. I sort of think of my art practice now as a visual diary where I reflect on and document and make sense, make meaning out of my experience as someone with a visual disability. Because it's an interesting thing. I was diagnosed with a hereditary degenerative eye disease called retinitis pigmentosa when I was 16. And knowing that I would be eventually blind is a gradual process of losing your sight, I committed to a visual career anyway. Mm-hmm. And so now I don't drive, and I just gave up biking, and I have tunnel vision and night blindness, and I've had cataract surgery. And so now I'm in this point where all my anxiety comes out in the art about that process. And there was a time when my disability and my art practice were separate, but now there's been a confluence. And so it's all tied together now. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a hard thing. And it's a very stabilizing thing for me to have an art practice.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And thank you for just opening up and sharing and being so vulnerable about that. That really reminds me of kind of what I'm trying to do with this show. And I guess the path that I'm on and all of us are on as individuals, the path of individuation, of just becoming the most authentic versions that we are of ourselves. And I was really thinking about, as you were talking about going through a piece and you getting the personal sense that it's done, and someone else might having outside opinions. It's like, oftentimes when I know I'm going through something, I'll be struggling and I might want someone else's opinion to tell me what to do. And I can get outside influence, but ultimately the guidance and wisdom we have is deep within. Just like
Yeah.
when you know that a piece is done enough.
Yeah.
And I can also hear what a passion you have, like being seized by the artistic process of becoming an artist, even knowing that your art is going to shift and evolve as your vision does. That it's like what needs to come out of you is going to emerge and will continue to emerge at every stage that you're an artist.
Yeah, totally. I'm struck by this sentiment of home that you brought up, because when I was in school, I thought of my studio as home and my apartment as the place that I eat and sleep.
Mm.
And whenever I'm in the studio, it feels like coming home. You feel the energy in that space when you enter it. Yeah.
Well, I'm curious in terms of the various studios you've been, like you were just in an MFA program at Stanford.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Was there like a home studio you had that you were in for most of the time? Did you also work at your residence where you lived, or like how do you how does that energy flow between the different places where you create?
Sure. Yeah. Before that, I was living in Berkeley, and I didn't have a formal studio. So my bedroom was my workspace and my living space. And so that affects how you make work, certainly because of spacing issues. And also some processes like painting are wet and messier than something like drawing that you can just pick up and put down. And so having the privilege and being lucky enough to have generous studio space at a funded institution like Stanford really is a boon to your practice, and that you can make more ambitious work, both in scope and scale. And so I tried to honor that experience as much as possible and never take the studio for granted. And I tried to be in there as much as I could. And even now I've been reflecting on that, thinking about how I felt like I ran out of time in that program, but I also gave it everything I had, and I'm proud of that.
Well, I wonder if you're also saying at a deep level, like there's more that wants to come out of you. So like your time was bound in that program. But when I hear you sort of saying like, I ran out of time, I hear you saying I have more that I want to create.
Yeah.
And it won't be in that same space.
Yeah.
But yet the energy will continue to flow and emerge.
Definitely. Yeah. I think going into the program, I had assumed that I would be in complete control of my time. And I think with some programs that is the case, but at Stanford, it is a very scheduled program. And in some ways it has to be, because it's part of a larger machine academic institution. And so I'm both daunted and excited by this time now that I have, where I have complete control of my time. And so I have questions that I'm excited to answer with forthcoming residency opportunities, where I can push the work in new ambitious ways that I didn't in school.
One area that I like to just hear from everybody about is what spirituality means to them. And I hear already there's so much of your essence that is coming out into your art. And how would you share or kind of reflect on that, of what spirituality means and how that ties into just you and your expression as an artist?
Yeah. Spirituality to me is a pretty nebulous thing. So much of it to me seems rooted in this complex experience of being human that feels maybe particular to or emblematic of the human experience in a way that maybe it's not for animals. I grew up in a Protestant religious household, but I don't consider myself to be religious. But I suppose there is, if you're taking the romantic view, something spiritual about arts practice, for sure.
I love that. Well, that kind of reminds me what you were alluding to earlier about your art being a vessel for an expression of some of your anxiety about the phase that you're in.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could share with us how you get through difficult moments in your life, like when you are having anxiety come up about painting.
I think that's why I have so much anxiety about the future, is because painting is so tied to my identity. And so if and when I'm in a situation where I have to put the brush down and I'm not able to make paintings anymore, what does that mean for how I take care of myself, what my self-conception is like, how I'm able to provide as a father in a family setting, in terms of like long-term making money, because you have to make money to be alive, costs money to be alive. And as an arts practitioner, it's hard to make money, obviously. And so there are things that I think about sometimes in the back of my mind, sometimes explicitly, but my arts practice is hugely useful, cathartic. I hesitate to say therapeutic because that's a different purview, but that intuitive process of making things is a way to process what flows through us and opens a channel for me that other things don't quite do. Mm-hmm. And so, and think about how I get through hard times. I rely on, because I'm a maker, because artists are people who make non-functional objects, making things, making drawings, making paintings, generating ideas, making my internal world physical and external is a huge part of that. And then also, of course, relying on the people in my life that I love.
Well, at this point in the show, I was hoping we could do a little meditation.
Oh, yes.
For artists around the world. Okay. And then we will go on to our musical portion. We are going to cover the music of Kenny Burrell, who is an incredible jazz guitarist, as you will soon hear. Okay, so if you're listening along with us and you're walking, like you can skip or just take a pause. We're just going to do like a short little meditation. So we're just going to close our eyes and take a couple of deep breaths in and out. And breathe in and breathe out. And I want everyone, and you, Cooper, just to draw awareness to your heart center area, your heart chakra. And I want you to imagine that your whole entire body is being filled with this golden light. Just spreading up through your chest, shoulders, neck, and head, down through your torso, legs, and feet. And you might say out loud or silently to yourself, may I be peaceful, content, free from danger, and liberated. We always start with ourselves. This meditation is a version of a metta or loving kindness meditation. And now we're going to imagine that from our hearts, we're going to send like a laser beam of light out, covering our entire city, especially with the focus on all of the creators and artists. So painters, sculptors, filmmakers, even children who are creating art, anybody who is creating, because this is such a vital force of energy that we need in the world for beauty, for healing, and just to feel alive. So imagine wherever you are, this golden beam of light is going out from your heart, covering your entire city or town. And may all artists present be peaceful, content, free from danger, and be liberated. And now imagine this going even further, covering your whole state or province. Imagine this golden light covering all of the artists. May they be peaceful, content, free from danger, and be liberated. And now imagine finally this, two more, this golden beam of light covering your entire country. All of the artists in your country. Just doing this beautiful work. May they be peaceful, content, free from danger, and be liberated. And then finally imagine from your heart this golden light covering the entire globe. Artists creating all over the world. May they be peaceful, content, free from danger, and be liberated. And just take a couple more breaths. And then just come back to the present moment when you're ready. And just gently open your eyes. All right, you ready for some jazz?
Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, we are going to cover the work of Kenny Burrell, and I'm just going to read a short little bio of him. If you're listening, you already know about Kenny Burrell. That's great. I always learn so much more about an artist, whoever I choose, because oftentimes I will be familiar with the artist. However, when I really do a deep dive, it's really fascinating just to get to know them a little bit and give us some context. Okay, and this bio is from the NEA website, which is the National Endowment for the Arts. Kenny Burrell was selected as an NEA Jazz Master in 2005. Kenny Burrell pioneered the guitar-led trio with bass and drums in the late 1950s. Known for his harmonic creativity, lush tones, and lyricism on the guitar, he is also a prolific and highly regarded composer. Born in Detroit in 1931, he found musical colleagues at an early age, among them Paul Chambers, Tommy Flanagan, Frank Foster, Yusef Lateef, and the brothers Thad, Hank, and Elvin Jones. While still a student at Wayne State University, he made his first major recording in 1951 with Dizzy Gillespie, John Coltrane, Percy Heath, and Milt Jackson. After graduation, he toured for 6 months with the Oscar Peterson Trio and then moved to New York, where he performed in Broadway pit bands, on pop and R&B studio sessions with Lena Horne, Tony Bennett, and James Brown, in jazz venues and on jazz recordings. He went on to work or record with such artists as Nat King Cole, Billie Holiday, Stan Getz, Gene Ammons, Kenny Dorham, Benny Goodman, Coleman Hawkins, and Jimmy Smith. As a leader, he's recorded more than 90 albums and is a featured guitarist on more than 200 jazz recordings, including ones with Art Blakey, who we'll hear today, Herbie Hancock, and Quincy Jones. Burrell's compositions have been recorded by artists including Ray Brown, June Christie, Grover Washington Jr., Frank West, and Stevie Ray Vaughan. His extended competition for the Boys Choir of Harlem was premiered at New York City's Lincoln Center, and his Dear Ella, performed by Dee Dee Bridgewater, won the 1998 Grammy Award. In addition to performing and recording, he was a professor of music and ethnomusicology at UCLA, a recognized authority on the music of Duke Ellington. He developed the first regular college course ever taught in the United States on Ellington in 1978. That would have been a good one. In 1997, he was appointed director of the Jazz Studies program at UCLA, where he enlisted such faculty members as George Bowanon, Billy Childs, Billy Higgins, Harold Land, Bobby Rodriguez, and Gerald Wilson. Burrell is the author of 2 books, Jazz Guitar and Jazz Guitar Solos. In 2004, he received a Jazz Educator of the Year from Downbeat. He's the founder of Jazz Heritage Foundation and the Friends of Jazz at UCLA, and is recognized as an international ambassador for jazz and its promotion as an art form. So cool. And I believe Kenny Burrell still resides in Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah?
So he's Southern California. All right, so let's go to the music. So the first piece we are going to hear comes from a new release that actually came out this year. It's called, from an album, On View at the 5 Spot Cafe. And it's a live album, and it features Kenny Burrell with drummer Art Blakey, recorded live in New York in 1959, August 25th, 1959. Kenny Burrell's on the guitar, Marcus McLaurin is on the bass, and Sherman Ferguson is on the drums. So if you're listening along with us, I will share these links, and you can go ahead and listen along with us. And the song we're going to hear is called Swingin'. So we just heard Swingin' featuring Kenny Burrell, Art Blakey, Roland Hanna was on piano, Ben Tucker on bass, and Tina Brooks on the tenor sax. So as you heard that, I'm just curious what thoughts, feelings, emotions, reflections came up hearing this piece?
Yeah, there's a few levels that I try to engage with art and with music. There's how I feel in my body while I'm listening to it, and I felt very hypnotized by that, almost sleepy. And so I hope for our viewers that are driving that they had a lot of coffee, because I think it was an effective piece of music in that it really pulled me in and put me in this very relaxed state where I started to droop. And
even though it was swinging, it was still...
Well, yeah, you're swinging. And there's, there are different sections to it, too, which was interesting. I was trying to figure out also, on a technical level, how many, because I don't have the literature in front of me about what instruments there, how many players there were. So I picked out the piano, of course, the drums, and what I thought was a trumpet, maybe that was a sax, actually. And then there, of course, was Kenny on an electric guitar. What was that in the middle?
Guitar is what I have in my notes. So I don't know exactly what type of guitar it was. Sounds like it was.
Yeah. And guitar. So on that level, that was interesting. And yeah, jazz as a genre is interesting because it's alive as you play it, in that you're sort of yes-anding with the other players and playing off of what's happening and not going from a set script. And so that's something I've always appreciated about jazz. That actually makes it really good for listening to in the studio. It's very complementary to the art production process, where you're inviting and encouraging chance and discovery and play, especially. So I got a lot out of that. I thought that was a great piece of music.
He was, I was just looking at 28 when he recorded this piece of music. So It was at the beginning of his career. I felt like there was a lot of joy in this piece. I felt like kind of I wanted to go out and like run or do cartwheels in the field.
It's got a nice bounce to it.
Yeah, there was a bounciness to it, like a real playfulness to it. And you mentioned sort of the intermingling, like where each of the instruments would have their solos and then come back together. Almost like, and it was very like joyful, playful.
It's harmonious too. Yeah.
And when I saw the title Swingin, like that always reminds me of kind of big bands or like a more type of structured swinging.
Sure.
And this felt like kind of more loose, almost like the guitar always gives it a little bluesy feel.
Yeah, it felt conversational.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like a formal experience.
So I feel like this invited me to just like not be so uptight, because I also run anxious and can just be like, ugh. So it's just just like, oh, okay, just chill.
Yeah.
So that was Kenny Burrell at 28. Right. And almost more than 65 years ago, that track is still swinging. That's what I love about jazz. It really is. Okay, so we are going to fast forward in time to 1990.
Okay.
And we heard in the bio about Kenny Burrell that he was heavily influenced by Duke Ellington to the point where he taught the first class on Duke Ellington, which I didn't know and thought was really cool. So we are going to hear the Kenny Burrell Trio in a recording from Germany, a concert at the Subway Club in Cologne in 1990, playing the Duke Ellington composition Mood Indigo. And it was recorded and broadcast by a German public broadcasting corporation. And as I always say on this show, a shout out to our European brothers and sisters who wholly embrace jazz and really helped it be popular around the world. They really embraced jazz, and many jazz musicians, especially when Jim Crow laws were very active here, would go and perform and live and stay for extended periods of time where they could live a better quality of life and really be deeply appreciated for their art. So Europe, especially our brothers and sisters over there, helped to spread the jazz gospel. So let us go hear Mood Indigo. If you're listening along with us, pause and I'll put the link and you can go and hear this piece. Okay, so we just heard Mood Indigo, Kenny Burrell's cover of this very beautiful classic Duke Ellington composition. So as you heard this piece, I'm curious what thoughts, feelings, emotions, reflections came up.
Yeah, this one felt a lot more like a nice stroll. And I think it's easy nowadays to feel very overstimulated by all the resources at our fingertips.
Yes.
So to be really present with a piece of music that really takes its time to develop in the soundscape that's washing over you, I actually really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a lot out of that. How about yourself?
Well, this piece, it's originally like Duke Ellington put lyrics to it, and it's about feeling really down and out. Like at one point he says, I'm like so sad I could lay me down and die. And in this piece, it's very bluesy and laid back. However, his version of it is not as like intense, like deeply, like it's a little bit more like I'm kind of just like taking life in stride. Like I kind of like, it's like you're sitting on a beach thinking about maybe something that is really heavy, and like you're also like holding that juxtaposition that life can be so many different things at once.
Yeah.
It's not like he's making light of it. It's like there's like a just a more gentle take, like he's kind of moving through the sadness or moving through the emotion, it feels like.
Yeah. It's interesting to know that the original piece had lyrics because it completely changes it when that is absent. Well, and you focus on different things.
For sure. And Duke Ellington, he put lyrics, I don't know exactly who put lyrics to it. I think it might have been him. But he originally composed it as like a piano tune. So he's played it many different times, just like without lyrics. Many singers have sung it, like Nina Simone. You probably heard her version of it. And it is different. Yeah. Depending upon the artist, they kind of put their own take on like the level of intensity of like the sadness, or like how blue, because we can be blue in so many different ways.
Many shades of blue.
This
one's indigo.
Yeah. So this was really lovely, and I love the sound of the audience and like the intimate type of club feel.
Yeah.
And so this was recorded in, I think I said 1990. So Kenny Burrell would have been about 59. So like 30 years after the first piece we saw or we heard.
Yeah. Knowing that, I'm trying to think about how if he plays differently than the first piece. Although the first piece is more of an ensemble piece. This one felt more like he was taking center stage.
Yeah. And it was smaller because it was just the trio, just the bass and the drums. I felt that too. Like he really shined and came forward.
Right.
We heard him in that. So, okay. Well, let's go on to our third piece. And this is a composition from 1993. Okay. So a couple years after this, still later in his career. And I wanted to get as many live pieces as possible where we could like actually see him versus like, listening to just a recording without the visuals.
Right.
And this is a piece called Midnight Special. I'm going to read a little bit about it. So the great Jimmy Smith, who played the Hammond organ, and guitar giant Kenny Burrell collaborated on dozens of projects over the course of their extended careers. So this is a recording live at the Vienne Jazz Festival in Vienne, France from July 7th, 1993. So we're in the theme of summer here. Okay. About, more than 33 years ago. Kenny Burrell is on the guitar, Herman Riley on the tenor saxophone, Jimmy Smith is the organist, and then Grady Tate is on the drums. And so we're going to hear a composition called Midnight Special. And again, I will put the links up. It's available on YouTube for free. And if you're listening along with us, go ahead and pause and shift over. All right, so Midnight Special. Got to see the live concert recording with the real 90s vibe. I'm curious about what that piece was like to you.
That one felt a lot more like it was grooving. Something where I can really use. Not quite a bounce like the first one, but not as leisurely as a stroll with the second one. Because the energy, I think, was consistent even though the instruments changed. But it had a lot of vivacity, for sure. And the organ, or like electric piano, I think it was a main player in that piece. I don't want to say that it overpowered the other parts, but it's interesting getting to watch it as well and seeing it, the technology being incorporated into how music is made. Yeah.
Say more about the organ, because also one thing I learned about from this really amazing hermit mystic teacher, he's our resident mystic, his name is Rigson. He talked about how when we hear a piece of music, and even if there's parts of the music that we feel like we don't like, we can learn from that too, because it can be representative of parts of ourself that we're like, we don't accept or reject.
Sure.
And I think I had a strong reaction to when I first heard the organ, and I love the Hammond B52, and it felt like a strong presence in this piece. And Kenny Burrell, I feel like he really softened it and brought like a really gentle bluesy flow to it. And so I was just curious when you mentioned that about the organ, like what you noticed, because it's also okay if you are like, parts of this are harder to accept, or they're not as pretty, or they're like, that's part of the experience too of jazz, of life.
Yeah, I think it's also a big testament to his technical prowess and artistic intuition to be able to use this instrument or this tool in such a deft way. And if you have an instrument that leans one way or the other, so obviously some instruments are quieter or maybe have a more delicate sound versus other ones that have a larger, louder presence, a great artist, or in this case musician, will know how to temper both of those, will know how to temper those impulses to go one way or the other and be able to round it out in a way that feels balanced with everything else that's happening in the piece. And I felt that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I really like that. To me, this piece felt like it was wonderful to watch Kenny Burrell. He was just like so intense on the guitar when the guitar soloed in on him, and thinking about the title, even like Midnight Special, the energy felt like, kind of hopeful, but like in that way maybe we feel at nighttime. There's also something maybe like kind of sexy about it, like I felt that, it was
like, in the beginning there was a very sexy undertone.
It was like
it started with.
I felt I really felt that in this piece. And there's a great quote by Wynton Marsalis, and he talks about like jazz, I'll like fumble it, but it's like jazz incorporates all of life, like the sexuality of it, like just everything. And that's present I felt like in this piece too. Yeah,
I would agree.
That would have been a great concert. And the French were huge and are huge jazz fans. So this would have been a wonderful jazz festival to attend in 1993.
Yeah. What's your favorite jazz festival you ever been to?
I have not actually been to a jazz festival.
Really?
I've been to many concerts.
Okay.
But that's still on my list. Is to go.
I wonder if we have any jazz clubs or in Sacramento.
There are some places. We should go out while you're here. We'll go out. Yeah, we'll go out. And there's a big one coming up in California in Monterey. And Stanford had a great jazz festival too. I think that was early in July. But
Frost Theater and Bing Auditorium.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple things at Bing.
They get great performers in there.
They do. Yeah, there's also, is it Hardly Strictly? There's a bluegrass festival that happens in Golden Gate Park that's free. It happens every like October or September. But of course bluegrass is different than jazz. I don't know how, but I understand they're different.
They are different.
Yeah.
One thing that when you said that we live in a very overstimulating world, I got a tip recently from a really lovely woman I met named Adrienne, and she said that she sets her phone to grayscale.
Oh yeah.
And that it's less like of a dopamine hit.
Right.
And I just did that a couple days ago, and I think it's helping a little bit. I think like I'm just more mindful of my phone use, and there is something that's like not quite as exciting about it.
Right.
So it's still early on. However, if you're listening and you want a tip about reducing stimulation, that came to mind. I just incorporated this. I'll report back in a couple weeks as to like, how it goes on this show. So maybe you guys can join me in doing the grayscale, smartphone.
I've experimented with that too, and I do think it helps for sure. Because, your phone is supposed to be a tool, not something that, pulls you in.
Right.
It's supposed to be something that enhances your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that we are the masters of, not vice versa.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
Still working on that. Well, before we wrap up with our quotes, I wonder if you could tell everybody where they could look at your work, where your virtual presence online is, and where they could go and commission a piece, etc.
Yeah,
We'll put the links up, everybody.
Yes, thank you. I don't have any exhibitions at the moment. However, I am online. I have a website. It's just coopersalmon.com where you can find my artwork. And I have a YouTube channel just at Cooper Salmon where I share hot takes on art topics. And it's also where I share lots of resources for art students as an extension of my teaching practice. And so I share educational art content on there as well. That's a mix of demonstrations. It's a mix of talking about art topics and otherwise. Some vlogs on there too, although with the channel I've experimented with a few different ways to use it, but I think it's becoming more of an educational tool. And I have an Instagram at Cooper Salmon Art where I share artwork and exhibition happenings. So that's where you can find me.
Well, wonderful. And you just graduated Stanford, and you have a residence coming up, and tell us just briefly about that.
Oh, yes. I will be an artist in residence at Marin Headlands Center for the Arts. It's an old naval base in Marin, just north of Golden Gate Bridge. So I'll be there in the fall for 6 weeks, developing a new body of work that I'm excited about.
That's so exciting.
So I'll be sharing what comes out of that on my Instagram and on my website.
Oh, I can't wait.
Follow me on there, and I'll be sharing new work.
That sounds great. All right. Well, let us wrap up. We have 3 final quotes.
Okay.
In art, the hand can never execute anything higher than the heart can imagine. Ralph Waldo Emerson. If I create from the heart, nearly everything works. If from the head, almost nothing. Mark Chagall. He's one of my favorites. I have his work up over there on my wall.
Yeah.
And finally, whether you succeed or not is irrelevant. There is no such thing. Making your unknown known is the most important thing. Georgia O'Keeffe.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts? Or just...
that last one from Georgia, I think is pretty powerful in thinking about making the unknown known is such a... sounds simple and easy, but I don't think it is. I think that's something we're all trying to do.
Absolutely. Well, that's what, I'm trying to do with my therapy clients, personally, myself. Like, we're all trying to become more aware and more like the authentic embodiment of who we are.
Yeah.
And it is such a process of unfolding of the layers of, our unconscious revealing itself, be it in art, in, learning about deep parts of ourselves in life.
Right.
Like, I chose that one because of that. Yeah. It's like, that's it.
Yeah. Getting to know yourself is a very important, vulnerable, difficult, and precious process.
And humbling, too.
Humbling. I agree with you on that. Yeah, life has a way of humbling me whenever my ego gets too big. Isn't that just the thing?
Yes. Yeah.
Just the way of it.
Always love a little bit of sort of a comeuppance for sure, right?
Sure.
A little portion of that always comes along.
Totally.
Well, thank you so much, Cooper.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, reflecting, and being present with us today. Please leave us a review and comment. Jazz Therapy is edited and produced by Patricio Garcia. Sage Salmon is our social media coordinator. To connect with us, find us on Instagram and TikTok. Our email is info@jazztherapy.com. Check back next week for our next episode. May Jazz Therapy soothe your soul.